That's simple.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. We're starting in. Actually, let's fade to black. Jan, you can go to YouTube. Starting in 5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for November 29th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, Beyond Good and Evil is back, and the Fallout TV show looks kind of good, and we see Shadow's feet. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Steve Saylor, everybody. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm excellent. Great to hang out again. I saw you at Summer Game Fest, and then
Yes.
I'm like, and then we've talked in DM since then. But it's like, okay, we hung out there. That was great. We're gonna try to hang out again soon. Looking forward to that.
Yes,
that'll
for
be good
sure.
stuff. You're gonna come over to GB at nights and come hang out on the couch again. I was like,
Yes, sir.
I was like, I'm like, who was at Summer Game Fest? I got to get back. I'm like, well, Steve, it was great. And then a couple great
thanks.
jokes.
Yeah,
And
I
stuff.
appreciate it. That was a fun time.
It was.
It's a very unhinged slash like controlled setting in that couch.
Yeah, you're right. It's because it's got like it feels very professional when you like look at it, and then you walk in and it's the least professional thing ever. So
of course, yeah, because one minute you got Phil Spencer on the couch, and the next minute you got us idiots.
and we had a lot of fun being idiots. Exactly.
Yes, we did.
Looking forward to that. That'll be a Wednesday, December 6th, everybody, that evening. Definitely come hang out with us. But yeah, no, how are you doing otherwise? How did this year go for you gaming wise? How are you feeling about it?
Oof, it's honestly like gaming wise, it's kind of, and then we'll talk probably a little bit about it today too. It's like it's been that kind of double-edged sword. Is that there's been a lot of really great games that come out this year, including some great accessible ones. But like it just the way the industry kind of has been, it's rough out there for game devs, and so it's just been. It's just trying to navigate the year that is 2023 with backlog and all.
Yeah, and I guess now would be a good time. You want to tell people a little bit about like your work and what they should know about you in case they aren't aware of Steve Saylor the way that I am.
Yeah, sure. So I am a content creator, Twitch ambassador, and accessibility consultant. I have worked with several studios to help make their games more accessible to disabled players, but just really honestly accessible to everyone, regardless if you are disabled or not. You might have heard like I've worked on games like The Last of Us 2. I worked on The Last of Us Part 1 remake, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm currently working on the Call of Duty franchise, and just talking about and advocating for accessibility all around.
Yeah, I always appreciate it because like my stuff is like ADHD and it's hard to pay attention, and so all this accessibility stuff happens, and it's like, well, we're going to give you multiple streams of the same information, and I'm like, boy, that helps me a ton. Like, it really does just benefit everybody. So, yeah, appreciate the work as always. But I'm sure we'll find angles to talk about with some of the stories today. But we'll also just talk about video games. So, as I say, let's get in here and explain what we do. Most weekdays, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with the Sonic 3 movie reveal shows off Shadow's feet, although there's an argument in chat right now about whether or not shoes are feet, because he is wearing like those Sonic sneakers, but I think that counts. Anyway, they're confirming that the movie is in production. It will be coming to theaters December 20th, 2024, so about a little bit more than a year from now, 13 months from now, we will be getting this movie. How do you feel about Sonic 2? That's actually one I kind of only barely watched over my kids' shoulders while doing something else.
Yeah, I think I've seen it once, and I was like, yeah, okay, sure. It's just more of relatively the same of what we saw in Sonic 1, which, hey, it's a good movie. So I don't know. I think I'm happy that we are getting more Sonic movies, because I think it's like Now we're kind of getting into, actual video game adaptations that are actually, pretty good. So like seeing Sonic kind of taking that and being like in the forefront of it, even though obviously with that in the CG sort of fiasco that we saw a couple of years ago before Sonic 1 came out, which was funny. But I mean, hey, they redeemed themselves. It sucks that studio closed that was working on it, but hey, like it's we got a good movie out of it at least, and they're continuing on with the franchise. It's gonna be interesting to kind of see what Shadow's gonna be like. I would have pegged for Idris Elba to actually play Shadow, honestly, but the fact that he came back or he came as Knuckles, I was like,
right.
So who do you think should play Shadow?
Yeah, I think they should. Since they have established Idris Elba as Knuckles, and I think like him kind of being very Idris Elba, but like turned up to 11 in that role, sure, you have to go in a completely different direction with Shadow, I think. Or you know what? Actually, no, I changed my mind right in that moment. You do the Niles and Frazier thing, right? You make Shadow even more so that it's the only character that can actually annoy Knuckles in that way of like, you are outdoing me at every turn. So who's a good person for that? God, that's a tough one.
I think you nailed it, honestly. Kelsey Grammer. Let's do that.
Oh my God. You're right. There it is. Yes, 1,000,000%. Kelsey Grammer would be a fantastic Shadow. Oh my God, that blows me away. Listen, I'm glad that these movies are doing well and that we're getting more of them. I do wonder, like, where is like Sonic's place is overall right now, because it does feel like, hey, as a movie, it's working really well, even though the games aren't working as much as, or not in every single instance. Some of them I think hit better than others, but they kind of come and go with a lot of these games. It's like at this point, I think he has fully transitioned Sonic, the character in the universe, into just being a media star instead of like some gaming icon the way he used to be, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although it's kind of interesting too. I can't remember what happened in Sonic 2, but like, didn't Jim Carrey like officially retire? Like, isn't he out?
He says that a bunch, right? I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to tell. I think he's like definitely always considering it. I bet that he'll keep doing these roles because it seems like it's light touch and he has fun with it, and they don't ask too much of him. But I don't think he's going to be trying to do. He had those couple of years where he was going after Oscars and taking on like heavy hitting roles, and then also doing stuff where he was in the full Grinch scuba gear where every inch of his body was covered in plaster or whatever. So I would imagine that he's like done with that sort of thing. He could do a light retirement and still come in and do these Sonic movies every once in a while. Eventually, they'll probably phase him out though, because he's not going to be under contract for forever. So I imagine they will try to move on from him. And maybe they set that up with this movie in some way. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that, I think you're right. A good transition into someone else, I think could be fun. Maybe not. Obviously, I want to see him like recast. But there's definitely plenty of other opportunities for more Sonic villains to kind of come into the fold. So that'd be interesting to kind of see. But I mean, that was honestly, to be honest, like I grew up, I played Sonic, but I wasn't really a huge like super Sonic fan. I was definitely more the Nintendo side. But I mean, the draw for me for watching that movie was definitely Jim Carrey. So I was like, all right, I want to see him like basically have fun with it. So if he's coming back for 3, great. I'll go see him in that. Like, that'd be great. And then see whoever they're going to cast as Shadow. Yep.
December 20th, 2024. Once again, well, I'm sure they'll have plenty of teasers and trailers coming up in the months to come throughout next year. But right now, actually, you know what? I haven't showed this yet. Let me put this. There you go. Now everyone can see his feet / shoes / sneakers.
So here's the question: do you think that now that we got a teaser photo, do you think that it's too early to be able to see a potential trailer at the Game Awards next week?
They could do a teaser, but it's like there's a lot of these instances right now of these things that could get announced with a small little asset at the Game Awards that are doing stuff outside of the Game Awards. Obviously, Dragon's Dogma 2 had a big blowout, but it's like they could have just moved that blowout to the other side of the Game Awards and done like a little teaser at the Game Awards, but they didn't want to do that. And there's, Grand Theft Auto 6. Clearly, we're expecting to hear about that any minute now, and not at the Game Awards. Maybe something will happen at the Game Awards with that, but it seems pretty unlikely. So a lot of these companies are choosing to not go with the Game Awards, even though it's like, by all accounts, the event itself gets millions and millions of eyeballs. So I guess I don't really know what the thinking is there to avoid it. I know that Jeff Keighley does have sort of a menu of, hey, if you are at a certain level and you still want to be on the Game Awards, you have to pay some money. But I don't think like big companies like Sega have to do that. I think he's happy to just take their content because that improves the quality of his show. But who knows what the balance of that is and what these companies are actually considering when they're making that calculus.
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, with the category of best adaptation being added last year, that was sort of my kind of like clue into like maybe Jeff wants to be able to expand out to any video game kind of property or adaptation that, hey, they want to be able to, you know, tease something or put out the first trailer of whatever on the thing, which I know one story we'll talk about today. Obviously, I think that could be potentially be at the Game Awards this year. So I don't know. I think he's trying to expand out, you know, kind of bring a little bit more of the Spike TV kind of days back a bit. But I like, hey, if it does show up at the Game Awards, I mean, there's going to be a lot of fans happy.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So related to Sonic, this next story. Sonic Superstars sales were slightly weaker than Sega had anticipated. This is from Ollie Reynolds at Nintendo Life. Sega Sammy has released its financial results for fiscal year 2024 Q2, confirming that sales for Sonic Superstars, released earlier this year on October 17th, were slightly weaker than the firm had anticipated. Despite this, Sega remains confident in the title, emphasizing that the Sonic IP tends to sell much better during the months of November and December, and so has ramped up marketing for the game to facilitate this. Ultimately, Sega is hopeful that Sonic Superstars can at least match the sales for Sonic Frontiers, which managed to shift almost 3 million copies as of February 23, greatly exceeding Sega's expectations. They have some like a quote about this, but it kind of repeats a lot of those details. I was always wondering about Sonic Superstars, Steve. I remember we had this conversation like at the time when they were talking about, hey, this is we do this because we're setting up the future of 2D Sonic and we want this to be appeal to future generations. And I asked my 4-year-old, what do you like better? And I showed her Sonic Mania versus Sonic Superstars, and without a doubt, Sonic Superstars. That's what she likes better. But sure. I'm wondering, like, the audience that does still show up for Sonic are people who have a lot of nostalgia for it, I think, still. So if you're going to have Sonic Frontiers be, like, the 3D game, and it's going to look the way it does, like one of those Unreal Engine demos made by a fan or whatever, and then over on the 2D side, I think it's probably still smart to go with sprites and really play on the nostalgia, and maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think potentially it could have been a mistake because it really only appeals to those like with the nostalgia factor of like remember playing the Sonic games back in the day, and anyone who has kind of become new to Sonic, whether it was through Frontiers or through the movie, I think they would kind of see this like as be like, I don't want to play that, looks too old or that looks too retro. I mean, it sucks because we're kind of at that age that we did play those, and it's like, it's not at retro. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
But I think that could be it. But also as well, I mean, you got to think of like the forecast of what October was like. I mean, you had Mario Wonder, you had Spider-Man 2, you had Alan Wake 2. Like, there's going to be a lot of there was a lot of games that kind of grabbed our attention, and I don't remember seeing really a lot of marketing at all for Sonic Superstars for that. Like until I read the story this morning, I was like, I forgot that it came out, to be honest. So I mean, yeah, sure, you can have expectations of how it's going to be based on, previous games, but it's like when you have a year like 2023 where there's just hit after hit after hit, almost like on a weekly basis, there's bound to be games that are going to slip through the cracks and also like not meet expectations. So I hope that there's no like dev blowback for this being like, we got to layoffs because, it didn't meet our expectations financially, but, or at least, I hope it doesn't really abandon the idea of making more 2D Sonic games. Cause I think Sonic Mania was my favorite Sonic game that I've ever played. It was great. I loved this. I loved everything about it. It was modern, but still kind of had that nostalgic value. So I think, it sucks that it didn't sell well, but hopefully, maybe they could put some more marketing back into it and be like, okay, hey, this game, we kind of have it out. You can buy it now.
Yeah, I do think they probably can have a pretty decent holiday. I do also remember when we were talking about this game at launch and looking at its like launch week sales in Japan where it barely charted at all. I don't even know if it made the top 20 in Japan. And that was like the same week, obviously, that Mario Wonder came out and sold like 650,000 copies physically in Japan alone. And it's like, oh my God, this is a completely different story for these two games. I wonder if it's like, okay, the game's just not selling well domestically in Japan. Maybe it's doing a little bit better internationally, and they can pick up some of that momentum through the holidays. I think if they, cut the price a little bit and do go hard on marketing, it's a good game for people who like the Sonic characters, I think. I didn't love it very much, actually, playing it, but I'm also someone who just doesn't like 2D Sonic all that much. So
yeah. What is the market share or the footprint between like Nintendo and Sega in Japan nowadays? Like, is it still like Nintendo pretty much dominates everything, or is it kind of the opposite?
Yeah, so if you look at those charts, Nintendo dominates everything, and that includes PlayStation, where like the PlayStation hardware is selling okay. It definitely, with the PlayStation 4 generation, PlayStation's kind of really dipped in terms of overall sales in Japan. It's picked up a little bit with the PS5, and that might just be people changing their habits a little bit from playing all on their phone to going back and saying, yeah, I'll play a little bit on the PlayStation. But when you look at the software charts, it is almost every slot of the 20 game chart is either a Nintendo published game or something on the Switch. And you'll get a couple months where it's like 2 or 3 things are on PlayStation 5 or maybe PlayStation 4. But no, it is Nintendo dominated in that country in a really big way, to the point where it's like Nintendo still really cares about what it does there, because if it gets a hit, like Pikmin 4 is like a $1 million seller in Japan alone. It's like, that's wow. If they could do that with a franchise like Pikmin, they could still make a lot of money there in a way that PlayStation just can't.
Right.
All right. Let's see here. Let's get on to this next story before we take a quick break. Dragon's Dogma 2 confirmed for March 2024, priced at $70. So we've been hearing this over and over and over again. March 22nd for Dragon's Dogma 2. Yesterday, they had a video that actually went into great detail about this game, and they confirmed that is the release date. The new information here was this going to be Capcom's first $70 game? Turns out, yes, that is the case. And I don't know, they are setting up Dragon's Dogma 2 in a way that I was not expecting them to. A big part of that is I was not expecting this game this soon. The fact that it's coming out in a matter of months now, Q1 of next year. But on top of that, it's like, okay, yeah, they talked about it a little bit, but they're going to take their time to really build up the anticipation and talk about it in the terms of, oh, this is going to be up there for us with Monster Hunter and with Resident Evil, because we have huge expectations for it. Well, it's like they talk about those expectations, and they're setting the $70 price. Do you feel that this game is reaching those levels where it's going to be able to justify those expectations?
I think so. I mean, it's kind of, well, nowadays everyone is sort of money is tight. Obviously, trying to be able to buy a game or justify buying a game at $70 is definitely quite a bit of a financial hit, especially with just all the games that we've either had to purchase or just had to get this year alone, just with all the good games we've had. So going into now 2024, I could definitely see a lot of people sort of like looking at the $70 price tag and being like, yeah, I could probably wait for this to either, maybe show up on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, sort of a free game of the month, potentially. But I think when it comes to like a game like this, when it looks like it has that kind of long sort of like play time with its RPG sort of elements and all that, like there is a little bit more time investment. I think the $70 is just, that's just how games are priced nowadays. I think with Capcom, like this will be their first one. Yeah, to me, like it's kind of hard to sort of like just looking at it and telling, yeah, this looks like a $70 game, but just based on what they showed, it's like, it looks like that there's a lot of effort into it. I mean, we'll see closer to, I guess, like because it's the sort of the biggest the preview we've had of it so far. I think that I think we'll have to see a little bit more just in order to be able to see like, okay, yes, this 100% justifies the $70 price tag. But I mean, here's the thing too, is that it's $70 for you guys, but it's like here in Canada, it's like $90 because the exchange rate.
Saw people talk about that. It's like 95 Canadian dollars, and I mean That's not a new story. It's been the way it is for a while now for y'all up there in Canada, where every game is significantly more expensive, and it's not just like, well, the exchange rate. Well, you guys, Canadian dollar, you get paid. No, it's like it really does. It costs more. Yes,
yeah. And now there's even an accessibility angle to it as well. We kind of I talked about this actually a while ago. I think probably maybe back in 2022 or 21 on GameSpot. It was something that we kind of called the disability tax, and it's because a lot of games are still, we're not knowing what accessibility is kind of out there. We're having to be able to spend this amount of money and on a game just to see if we can be able, disabled players can be able to play it. And if they find that they can't, getting a refund for these games, especially if it's digital, is extremely hard to be able to get.
Yes.
It is. I actually purchased and paid for Forspoken because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try, see what it's like for accessibility. Found out I basically couldn't be able to play it, and trying to be able to get a refund for PlayStation, it took me 2 weeks just to try to go through the loop of an AI chatbot and to try to get to anybody to ask like, hey, I need a refund. No one picked up or anything, so I couldn't even get that. Nintendo is honestly, and you can go look this up. There's like an FAQ. They have the worst refund policy. It's like basically if you buy it digitally, tough. You can't get a refund.
They're care.
Like, no, you should have. And their excuses, you should have looked at reviews and screenshots to see if this is a game worth for you. I'm like, what? How? So it just sucks. It's like when we have these, that's why disabled players, we rely on services like PlayStation Plus or Game Pass so that we can be able to, it's easy for us to, download it, try it. If it doesn't work, then delete it and find and no sweat. But having the $70 $8 or plus price tag, it's especially for disabled players, it's a lot harder to be able to, unless we know what accessibility is going to be in there and if whether or not it's going to be accessible to our specific disability, it's going to be very harder. It's going to be harder for us to be able to justify that price tag even more.
How do you do you think the Steam refund way of 2 hours with the game under 2 weeks and it's no questions asked refund, is that acceptable? Do you think that works for you?
Yeah, actually, I think that because it gives us enough time to be able to, because we could usually disabled players can usually try a game and we'll kind of know within that first few hours whether or not it's something that is playable for us, because majority of the main gameplay loop is introduced in those first few hours. It's very rare that we'll see other new elements being added on later into the game, unless there's an RPG skills based mechanic where you're basically upgrading skills, and then by upgrading those skills actually do become accessible. That's kind of rare, but I think it's having that kind of extra, a little bit of okay, you play a couple hours of it and see if it works, and then you can be able to at least get a full refund. That'd be great. I mean, Xbox actually even has it where literally they don't. It's not intonated that you can be able to get a refund if it's for accessibility reasons. You do have to fill out a form, and they do it on a case-by-case basis. But basically, you just mentioned it's because accessibility, they automatically refund. They don't even bother with it. But I think that Steam sort of let's give it a bit of time just so we can try it. I would love to be able to kind of see that adopted pretty much across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for a lot of people looking at reviews does make sense, but I mean the specific scenarios that you're talking about, everyone's disability is different, and figuring that out even from a disability review and an accessibility review, it's okay, yeah, I think I have a good idea, but you need to experience it yourself at a certain point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And whenever I try to do an accessibility review, I try to cover as many of the disability spectrum as I can. But I know that there's going to be areas where I can say, yeah, this is it covers a lot of what we're looking for this particular type of disability. But it always is dependent on the game itself. For instance, a friend of mine, actually, friend of the show that you had on, Grant Stoner, he we've always talked about The Last of Us 2 being sort of the most accessible game that we've ever had. He can't play it because he couldn't be able to hold a PlayStation controller. So even though it has all the accessibility that the game has for multiple disabilities, he's kind of one that basically didn't fall into that disability spectrum of that he could play it. And so I'm actually curious to be able to, he's got the access controller. So I'm curious to see what his review of it, to see if he can be able to play these games finally. But it's stuff like that. It's you never know until you actually try it. And whenever I give my review of score, it's generally based on a kind of general sense, but I always kind of say it's hey, if you're curious, if you think it kind of covers a lot of disability aspects or accessibility that's for you, then try it. But it's still that kind of risk, especially with the price tags of games nowadays.
Excellent. It's Dragon's Dogma 2 once again, March 22nd, 2024. I'm looking forward to this. $70, like you said. It is just what kind of the standard for the market now. I'm not surprised. And there's a certain element of Capcom saying, no, this game is that important. We do think it should be our first $70 game. It is going to be a big deal. We have put a lot of work into it. And it is going to sell millions of copies, something they've also said to their investors about this game. So kind of like putting on their big boy pants and saying and telling us this is a big deal is a good way to make us believe it's a big deal. So now they just got to deliver on it, and I'm sort of ready for it. I'm watching this trailer as it's happening. I've only had a chance to skim through it before, and I really like what I'm seeing. So looking forward to getting
it looks good. I'm curious to try it out.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, a lot more news. We'll get to all that right after this. All right, we're back, and we're talking Beyond Good and Evil's 20th Anniversary Edition, re-emerging with first details and screenshots. This is from Nintendo Everything. After it was first leaked at the end of August, Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition has now come back into the spotlight with first details and screenshots. The game could be dropping on Switch very soon, as a listing has now appeared on the Xbox Store page. This is the Nintendo Everything site, so that's why they're phrasing it like that. The description mentions that it'll include improved graphics, controls, and audio, along with brand new autosave and cross-save features. I think this looks pretty good. Steve, were you ever a Beyond Good and Evil player?
No, funny enough. So my best friend who grew up next door to me, he played it, but I never really got a chance to play it. Like there was a period of time where I couldn't really play a lot of games, especially like on stuff like the N64 or PlayStation and forward. So this was definitely one of those. I'm like, it looked really cool. I was like, I really wanted to give it a try, and then I've completely forgot about it until whenever they said Beyond Good and Evil 2 was kind of being teased or whichever. Which, by the way, is that ever happening? Do you know anything about this, Jeff? You have the pulse. You have your finger on the pulse of things. What is going on with Beyond Good and Evil 2?
I mean, I always say that if it's being worked on, which maybe it is, if it's being worked on, it's not going to look anything like the Beyond Good and Evil 2 that they first introduced all those years ago, and that they've shown off in a couple of trailers. I think that version of the game, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt version of the game is dead.
I was going to say.
JGL, he is out. They got someone else in there to steal everyone else's work. I think something called Beyond Good and Evil 2 will eventually come out. I just don't think it's going to look anything like that. And really, who cares? Like, I think most fans of Beyond Good and Evil 2, it's like, or Beyond Good and Evil 1 would be like, yeah, just make another one of those instead of whatever this thing you were trying to do is. So,
but also, like, this 20th anniversary edition, like, I think could potentially be like that, sort of gauging the pulse of like, could we do another? Could we actually, could we work on a 2? Could we get back to it at some point? And I mean, hey, I'm curious to be able to try it out, to actually be able to play it, like if it's going to have any sort of modern control schemes or stuff like that, or potentially any accessibility. I mean, it is Ubisoft, so I'm like, Ubisoft has been very good about making a lot of accessibility happen in a lot of their games across all franchises, and so I'd be very curious to see what that would be like. So. I mean, hey, we'll see when it comes out. I'm looking forward to. Hey, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, it's the game itself, I think, looks decent in some screenshots. Some look a little Spartan, and maybe like there's some weirdness in the visuals. A lot. I mean, this will just have to come down to actually getting hands on, like we keep saying. Some of the things that they are promising here: 4K, 60 frames per second with improved graphics, improved controls, improved audio. And that aforementioned brand new autosave and cross-save feature, which, I always appreciate. That was what I'm playing Super Mario RPG right now, and that has obviously still has its old save system of like jumping on a little block and going up to the save menu, but they also just like, oh, we're going to autosave now as well. And it's like, oh yeah, man, that's nice. If you're going to do one of these remasters, that's a quality of life feature you kind of can't go without. So I'm glad they're doing that.
But do you think 4K 60 frames on a Switch? You really think? Do you think that? Yeah,
right. That's not going to be 4K on a Switch. This is the Switch version will be like 1080. It will be 60 frames per second probably. I mean, this game was 60 frames per second on the GameCube. Gotta imagine that would, yeah. And if they're doing a straight up port, not doing it in an emulator, although I'm trying to think, some of those emulated GameCube games that have that Nintendo have released, I think some of those were 60 frames per second. Mario Sunshine was 30, but it was always 30. So yeah, it won't be 4K, obviously, but it'll probably be 4K on some of these other platforms because it's coming to Xbox and things like that as well. So yeah,
they have what's the program that they have for the FPS, the when they're for older games like 360 games? I can't remember where they basically like they increase the FPS,
the backward compatibility program. The
sort of, or I think they've gone like, they have a special thing where they've increased the frame rate of a lot of these older games,
right? Yes, totally.
So hey, great. Okay, hey, I was gonna play it on probably on Xbox anyway, so I'll play it on that.
Yeah, I wonder if this, because the Beyond Good and Evil was on Xbox. I wonder if that's backward compatible and has some of those features already. It'll be
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on here. Unity is laying off 265 employees at Weta Digital as part of the company reset. This is from Haley Williams at GameSpot. Unity has announced a new round of layoffs and the closure of Weta Digital after it decided to end its agreement with Peter Jackson's Weta FX. The layoffs will impact 265 employees, a total of 3.8% of its workforce, Reuters reports. Back in December 2021, Unity acquired a part of Peter Jackson's Weta Digital, including Weta Digital's tools, pipeline technology, and engineering talent in a deal worth $1.625 billion. The remainder of Weta Digital remained under Jackson's ownership and rebranded to Weta FX, with the company maintaining an agreement to use Weta Digital's tools and services. Basically, what's happening here is it sounds like they're winding down the dedicated development of these tools, and if these tools continue, it'll just happen over at Unity proper, and they were always getting integrated into Unity's overall tool set. Weta, obviously best known for working on the FX of Lord of the Rings. They do a lot of work. They've worked on Star Wars. Disney owns ILM now, and they still work with Weta. So it's like, oh yeah, that's how much work they're doing. And Weta FX should still continue doing that stuff, using a lot of these tools. They were just like licensing these tools now from Unity, and it seems like they will still exist. But Unity is paring it back in such a way that it does feel kind of like an end of something here. I don't know. I guess I didn't know what to make of this from the beginning. It's like they always said, hey, we're gonna bring all these tools into Unity's overall toolbox, and it's going to revolutionize making real-time graphics for video games, as well as, a video game or video production for stuff like commercials and movies and television. I don't know if that ever really came to pass. I don't know of anyone using Unity for filmmaking. Maybe they are, and I just haven't heard about it. But either way, Unity still a mess, right?
Yeah, I wondered if this was sort of like a shift to being like, okay, well, if we can't get the money from the developers, we're just going to go and sell off some of our assets. But it feels weird. It's like they're giving it's almost like they're giving back the toolbox to Weta, but they're taking the tools with them, which is kind of like, okay, but how does that work? And then apparently they're saying like, oh, they like Weta can still be able to hire the devs back. So it's,
yes, they're going to try to hire as many of them as possible back, is what they're saying.
Yeah, so it's a layoff, but not really a layoff. But it's, why do they even have to go through that way? I don't know. It's Unity is such a mess at the moment. I'm just like, I just don't even know what the heck is going on over there, and at this point. And the unfortunate thing is, again, it's like, it's the devs that suffer out of all of this, and it just on just mistakes that are happening up top. And I know that you have these conversations many times this year, but it just seems that we're in that kind of like that period of the industry where it's like, when you have like over 8,000 people that have been laid off just this year alone, it like something has to be done. And whether it's acknowledgement from some at the top, whether like I saw that letter going or that basically the thing about that should be brought up at the Game Awards essentially, and or at least something from like something needs to change. And if we want to have more years like 2023 when it comes to amazing games, we're going to need to be able to step up and make sure that the devs can be able to at least work on the games, or whether it's our favorite franchise or soon to be our favorite game.
Yeah, it's the stability in the industry was something that was like It's never been real, but it felt like, oh, we are approaching a place where, hey, some of these live service games, they have really predictable income. And so we could just, if we're selling services, we're going to be fine. And the money will just keep coming in, and we could just keep a steady team around 24/7, 365 days a year, and not have these high tide, low tides. We just put out a game, and now we're not going to make money again because all the pre-orders already came in. And so we got to like lay people off for years. And it's like, nope, actually, we're right back to that point. They're all of these promises of steady income in the gaming industry to cover over these years of keeping people hired on these teams. It's like, no, that is not available. That's not real. And so these companies are right back to being like, oh God, we are in panic mode anytime we don't see where the next big paycheck is coming from. So yeah, something needs to be figured out there. I don't know what it looks like, but spreading out the revenues and probably unionization, figuring out a way to say, hey, we actually looked at your books. We know that you're able to support this team for longer, and let's just figure out a way to make that work. Hopefully they can figure something out. But yeah, this year is a rough time for the industry overall. Unity will maintain ownership of the tools, and Weta FX will be able to keep using those tools as they have been. So not much is going to change for like Weta's visual effects work in Hollywood and things like that. Just sounds like Unity doesn't want much to do with it. They are quoted here saying Unity believes that Weta Digital Team are remarkable, but Unity needs to become leaner as it focuses its expertise on its core business. It also believes it makes more sense for Weta FX to own full end-to-end production activities directly. Unity will be focusing its expertise and people on on other matters. The whole idea here originally was Unity was going to build this cloud environment where anyone could do work the way Weta's been doing it. And now it's like, no, they are fully abandoning that. So yeah. Company reset. Professor Layton and the New World of Steam is launching in 2025. There was a new trailer for this. This comes from Nintendo Everything. Professor Layton and the New World of Steam just popped up during the Level 5 Vision 2023-2 event with the news that the Switch game is launching in 2025. Professor Layton and the New World of Steam was revealed for Switch during a Nintendo Direct earlier this year. Not counting Layton's mystery journey, which focused on Catriel, this will be the series' first new entry in a decade. Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy previously came to 3DS in 2013. This is also, I'll just kind of get to this next story since it's also level 5. Decapolice delayed launch move to post 2024. This is from Nintendo Everything. The latest on Decapolice was shared today during the level 5 Vision 2023-2 presentation with a delay announcement. According to President Akihiro Haino, the game's launch has moved to post 2024. It was originally announced for this year. Haino explained that the title possesses a vast open world of unprecedented size, and the team decided to take a little more time. He added, "We aim to build a dense and immersive world filled with the opportunities to play. Various incidents will occur in many different locations." That's always a big promise to make.
It's also a very generic promise to make, too.
A very generic promise to make, yes. So level 5 it does always seem like it has a ton going on, but Decapolice seemed like the one that was going to be coming out the soonest, and now that's not even coming out for more than a calendar year. And then Professor Layton is not scheduled for 2025 either. I don't know. I'm a fan of level 5, but it always just does feel like they are scrambling in a way that they shouldn't be. It's like they have several successful franchises that people like. Maybe go back to Ni no Kuni or something like that. But it's like, no, they're like, oh, we're going to try this other thing, and it's going to take several years. And I guess at a certain point, making big swings is part of being a video game publisher these days. But it's like, I don't know, level 5 always felt like they were in that in-between stage where they're like, should we be making much bigger swings, trying to make Professor Layton feel like a AAA game, or should we keep making the small little things that sell, not 1 million copies, but somewhere in the 500,000 copy range, and be happy with that? I don't know. In the situation where they are delaying games by more than a year, it's like, oh, that's tough to see how that works out financially. What do you think?
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's kind of like a level 5 is kind of an example of like what we used to have as the AA studio, and they're not necessarily indie, but they're not necessarily in that like AAA, I guess, sort of status, as it were, and it just shows the struggle of how it is to be able to make games that at least they have an audience for, but when they have like a team that maybe not necessarily a huge amount of money that they would want to be able to kind of commit to making these big swings, it's just not there. And as investments kind of like studios like especially like Embracer buying up pretty much a lot of those AA studios that we used to have, and then now selling them off or closing the doors, it sucks for those kind of studios that are not indie, but like they're kind of in that in between stage, and we don't know where we want to place them. Like obviously, with Professor Layton like not having a game in the past like decade, like that's like they could have been able to make more games in those in a lot of their franchises. It just seems like anytime that they try, it's just like it's a stuttering start for a lot of their franchises. So I hope them well. I really love to be able to kind of see them, have that sort of breakout game and being like, yes, level 5 is essentially back, quote unquote. But it's just sad to see.
Yeah, it is. And I apparently the Decapolice post 2024 thing was mistranslated. They came out on Twitter and confirmed, no, it's coming out in 2024 now. So it was delayed from this year to next year. Much more reasonable and maybe less worrisome, because it's like who knows, maybe eventually it does get delayed to 2025, but going from it's coming out this year to it's not coming out for at least like 15 months, that feels extreme, and that's not what's happening here. Now, just to remind everybody, Decapolice is level 5's kind of open worldish crime suspense RPG that has obviously it's level 5, so very anime tones, and it looks promising. But yeah, now it's coming out next year, and if that game comes out and is like kind of hits its stride, I think it could signify like a new era for level 5. But otherwise, I think you're right. That's stuttering starts for a studio that's done a lot of great games in the past. So
yeah, let's hope that they can get some momentum going so that we can actually get Professor Layton and Ni no Kuni some good games out of that after Decapolice comes out.
All right, next story. Amazon's Fallout series gives us a look at power armor, ghouls, and a new vault. This is from Austin Goslin at Polygon. This is Prime Video's Fallout series, and it has finally given us our first glimpse at its post-apocalyptic world. There's new photos, and I'm just gonna show those off. Let me make sure that this is framed up well enough. Yeah, that's good. Did you get a chance to take a look at these? I think this looks pretty good.
Yeah, they look amazing. Like this armor set, like it just looks like it just jumped out of the screen of the game. Like I absolutely love it. Like and also like seeing Walter Goggins as a ghoul. I mean, like I forgot that he was cast in the show, and I'm like, yes, I really want to see him in that. The photos look amazing. I hope that like this kind of like I was alluding to earlier, I would hope to be able to see like a trailer at the Game Awards next week, or at least relatively soon, because the suit of armor, like that looks dope as hell.
Yeah, I think the power armor looks really great on film in a way that I was not expecting it to. I thought this would be really tough to translate, and I think there's a chance still that it could look cheap when we're actually seeing it in motion. But part of me is like, Fallout can pull that off. And Todd Howard is speaking in those terms. Somewhere in this article or somewhere, he's basically like, we're going to take it seriously, but there will also be the Fallout winks of we know what's going on here. We know like what we're making. We know the kind of cheese that we're sprinkling on this otherwise serious topic. And say, okay, I'm a little bit hopeful. I know that the Fallout series, for a lot of fans, lost some of its bite and its satire when it did go to Bethesda from the studios it was at previously. But I imagine a show that is, if you're taking on this topic and you're making it a show, you got to be doing it with the satirical bend. And I hope that the stuff really comes through. But in terms of just the way it looks in stills, they nailed it.
Yeah, no, like these shots look amazing. Do you think that this will potentially or like would allude to some sort of Fallout game announcement at some point, whether we're talking like a remaster or of like either something like 3 or New Vegas? This is something that our friends talked about on a gaming podcast that we do. Literally, it's called the Gaming Podcast, and we had this literally the discussion of just like, okay, could now that Xbox owns Bethesda and they have a few studios, including Obsidian, that worked on New Vegas, like Do you think we're going to see a potential be like, okay, yeah, even though Elder Scrolls 6 is supposedly the next game from Bethesda, do you think we're going to see a Fallout on the horizon?
Well, I mean, that's been the trend with everyone else, right? Right now, like Sony's big thing is, hey, we have all the synergy we could do between our Sony pictures and our games, so let's try to have a game ready to go for these things. Or if we released a game 3 years ago, let's remaster it so we can put it back on the shelf for people who are going to be super into The Last of Us because of the HBO show. And that is the strat right now. And so it's like you do begin to wonder, it's like they must be doing something. I think what the likely scenario here is that any brand new big Fallout game is still years and years away. But they will probably find ways to re-release some of those games with extra features or improved in some other way to get something on the shelf. And then they will probably have an announcement at some point to be like, yes, something is in the works. And what I've heard was that Obsidian was talking about coming back and working on some follow-up to New Vegas. But that was very early conversations, and who knows if that ever turned into anything real. But the point is that they know they want to make more Fallout, and it's like this is it's just tough because even though they have a ton of studios, there's not a lot of obvious people to just go make that happen and make it happen quickly. It probably will still take several years. So I think they'll be happy if this is like a big hit, but a part of them will be like, damn, I wish we had a new game to release alongside that, because what we saw from The Witcher on Netflix and all these other things is they tend to help sell those games a ton. They sell a ton of copies. Yeah. So yeah, I think they wish they had one. I don't think they actually will.
Do you think we'll see a resurgence of Fallout 76, or at least a new kind of like, it's not that bad now?
Yeah, I think that is the key thing that they probably will try to make it happen, is they will include some Fallout 76 updates that take on some aspects of the show, and that'll be where that stuff lives. And I think that is effective to a certain degree. I mean, obviously that game is doing much better than it did at launch, and it does have its fans. I don't know if it's the kind of thing where you could take people who like a show and be like, go play this online version of the game. Some people will, but it's not going to be like when people go to the store to get The Witcher 3 because they watch The Witcher, where that's like, no, this is just the story, and you're going to be able to play this, and you're going to get a lot of the same feelings you get when you watch the show. That's not, they're not going to be able to sell Fallout 76 on that too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be a synergy as like a Last of Us show with a Last of Us game. Yeah,
right.
No, that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know. It looks good. And yes, that is Walton Goggins. Jerf, you were asking about that. That is our boy Walt, looking real cool as a ghoul.
Love the Western look. Like I'm a huge Western fan, and it just like I've always loved that aspect of Fallout. So and then with obviously with the kind of the 60s sort of vibe of a Fallout shelter, like. It's so good. Like I can't wait to be able to see this on screen.
Yeah, I think that's Jonathan Nolan, Chris Nolan's brother, who is the showrunner on the show, and that is John Nolan. Sense. Yep. Yeah,
that makes sense. Westworld into Fallout. Yeah, that makes sense.
I can see that. Yes, exactly. I think he can make this work. This has got to be like a flashback scene. Maybe not. I don't know.
That'd be interesting to see if there's gonna be any like flashback scenes pre-vault. Like that would be interesting.
I don't know, but look at the big the details of all the nukes over there. All right, cool. I'm excited. I like any show that deals with any sort of radiation or bombs going off. I'll watch a million documentaries about nuclear weapons because I'm fascinated by that stuff. So yeah, this. Were you
Barbenheimer this summer? Did you do that?
It's hard for me to get to the theater because of the kids, but I did as soon as I was able to watch that at home. I did. Yes.
Nice.
Yes,
nice.
Definitely. I hit the wrong button there, everybody. Sorry about that. 2 up vertical. There we go. No more music. All right. Next couple of stories here. Marvel Snap team says it will carry on as ByteDance pulls back from games. This is from Gabriel Gray at Destructoid. After developing social media apps like TikTok, ByteDance made a big push into gaming with its Newverse brand. Now the company may be reversing course. Newverse is a developer behind titles like Marvel Snap, One Piece The Voyage, and Warhammer 40,000 Lost Crusade. They're kind of like a co-developer / publisher because Last Supper or whatever that studio is who made Marvel Snap. According to a report from Reuters, ByteDance is scaling back Newverse and looking to sell off Moontown Technology, its other development brand. We regularly review our businesses and make adjustments to center on long-term strategic growth areas, a ByteDance spokesperson told Reuters. Following a recent review, we've made the difficult decision to restructure our gaming business. the studio over there that's making Marvel Snap says they will continue making the game, and it should be mostly unaffected by this. But yeah, it's one of those things like you would think Marvel Snap would be successful enough that you look around and be like, okay, yeah, one of our things hit. We tried some other stuff. This was the only one that hit, but we understand it's a hit-driven business. And if you're able to get one, that's pretty impressive on its own merits. So the fact that even a big Chinese conglomerate like ByteDance is pulling away from gaming in some ways, I think it signifies just the volatility of the overall market, right?
Yeah, and just looking at like kind of like I used to teach like a college course here in Toronto, and it's all about social media, and I talk about like the kind of the history of TikTok, and it just ByteDance always kind of like popped up and being like, okay, they're buying the studio or buying this company, and it was always like interested in acquiring things and then selling things and then combining things into things. I mean, that's how we got TikTok in the first place with ByteDance, and I think it was Nguyen, I think how to pronounce it, that's what blended into TikTok, and ByteDance bought Musical.ly back in the day. So it just like this is ByteDance MO, but this is like, it's one of those things of like, yeah, it's a hit. Why don't you sort of capitalize on just that? And, hey, let's just keep it like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of deal. And it just sucks that like, I don't know. I love Marvel Snap. I play it occasionally. I'm not on the daily driver like a lot of my friends are, but it's just sad to see kind of like the behind the scenes, like who knows what's going to happen, I still want to be able to see what's his name come up on Jeff Keighley's stage and just go. Be very enthusiastic about Marvel Snap. So
Brad, I can't remember his last name now.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, I just hope that basically that doesn't mean that Marvel Snap isn't.
There it is. Yes, thank you. There we go.
Yeah, that Marvel Snap isn't going to be ending anytime soon. So we'll see. Yeah,
I mean, I think that as long as that game's able to get out of that orbit and continue on fine, almost no harm, no foul, because that is the game that people care about from that studio. All right, last story here. Silent Hill Ascension isn't written by AI, the dev insists, saying the suggestions otherwise is a veiled insult. And I don't think it's too veiled. This is from Cameron Coe at GameSpot. After a viral tweet accused Silent Hill Ascension of being written by artificial intelligence, that viral tweet written by Voidburger, the CEO of the studio behind the interactive Choose Your Own Adventure series has insisted it was written by real people. He added that any insinuation that it wasn't is just a veiled insult to talented humans who have worked hard to create something they are proud of. The scene in question that really hit this off, and again, Voidburger tweeted this, and it was a hit tweet. It is a man coming out of the woods and saying that he's hunting for berries, look to make jam, and then he just disappears, and that's his only interaction with the story. It does feel weird, but it does just feel like bad writing at a certain point. And I know, Steve, that humans are capable of bad writing even without the help of AI, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like just because you can write and you're a human doesn't mean you can write well.
Yep.
And it just, I get it. It's like people are sort of trained to be like, automatically they think anything that's sort of written poorly is kind of potentially could be AI. But it's just because there's so much unknown about AI in like right now, and like who's integrating what into where. I'm here's the thing. Like, I am all for AI being used as a tool, but not to be able to replace art. And if people are using this as sort of as a shortcut or a scapegoat to be able to kind of get past, or to kind of just get the stuff through, then no, I'm like the replaces humans. No, I'm not a big fan of that. But I mean, yeah, you're right. It's like, just because you're a human doesn't mean you can't write bad stuff.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, where it's like people are gonna use the tool and the tools available to them, but it has like that. The key term there is people. Like, people have to be involved, and we've seen the results when people aren't involved in helping to guide AI in whatever process. It almost always is just drivel and nonsense and not really worth anyone's time, or it's a novelty, like those like that Seinfeld show that was on Twitch for a while, and I think it still is, where it's just a bunch of random words mushed together to kind of like resemble a Seinfeld-like thing. And it's like, well, this is weird and a novelty, and then it wears off really fast, and that's what we can expect from AI without really human involvement. This, though, It does. Just someone in the chat mentioned it's like a scene out of Birdemic, when like a bad Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. Yeah, and I think that's just what this thing is. It's a bad video game movie, and that is possible without the help of AI for sure.
Exactly. And but also it's like we don't know the context of this. We don't know what is really kind of happening. It's just sort of like it's just one clip that's just taken and just anything that basically put up with this kind of context, it's without anything, it like you don't know what's going on with this. And and hey, and like people are like, well, like how would you get hired if you're like that? But it's like, hey, junior writers, they have to learn somewhere. So if they as long as they're able to, get the bad writing out then, and then, be able to elevate and get better, then hey, let's do that. Then, but yeah, where else are junior writers going to be able to go and get at least some sort of work in? Yeah.
And it's at a certain point, they're filling up hours and hours of content with this thing, right? Like it's an ongoing thing, or at least it's ongoing at the moment. There's going to be a lot of scenes that are just stinkers, unless that they put a ton more effort into it. And it just doesn't seem like that kind of project. It seems like it's the kind of thing where it's experimental and they don't really know what's going to work and what doesn't. And they probably aren't hiring great screenwriters to come in there and figure this stuff out, because that would be a waste, because they don't even know if that's going to be effective. So. Yeah. Hey, Silent Hill fans, I get it. You guys are in a tough spot, and this is not helping. Hopefully, those other games start coming out and they live up to your expectations. That seems impossible.
How are you feeling about the Bloober game of Silent Hill? How do you feel about that?
It seems like it's going to have a tough time being able to win over those fans, but I don't know. I bet it comes out and is better than expected, because the amount of scrutiny that it's going to get externally, I think, will increase the scrutiny it gets. Maybe not from Konami. Who knows if Konami actually cares? But I think Bloober's afraid of upsetting a lot of people, so they will take their time, and hopefully they could do a decent job. And really, what they could do is just recreate the old game almost exactly, so you can like wash your hands of any creative decisions and just say, hey, we did what they did, and we tried to portray it in a respectful way. And who knows if they're going to be able to pull that off. It will still be tough. So I'm worried for that studio in that game.
Yeah, did you talk about that sort of like that post that they made? Was it yesterday or the day before? Like that they're like, yeah, no, it's still happening.
We did talk about that, and the question was like what caused that to happen? It was like the theory is people are so upset about this Silent Hill Ascension that the studio working over there felt the need to come out and be like, hey, don't worry, the good thing's still coming. Although there's still questions about whether or not it's going to be the good thing or not amongst Silent Hill fans. We'll see.
Gotcha.
All right. That does it for the news. I got a poll question from Monday in here somewhere. Let's see if I could find that. There we go. Are you going to update The Last of Us Part 2? Nope. Let's refresh. There we go. There it is. RoboCop is working security at the Game Awards. What is his prime directive? Serve the public trust, protect the Keeley, or uphold gamer law? I'm going to go with uphold gamer law. 12% said serve the public trust. 32% said uphold gamer law, and 56% said protect the Keeley. And that probably would be.
Yeah, that would have been my vote too. Protect the Keeley.
That probably is the thing that is actually going to be his number one prime directive. I have a new poll question that we will talk about on the show tomorrow. But before we get to that, Steve, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna be able to find me pretty much Steve Saylor pretty much everywhere on YouTube, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, whatever. But you can also be able to find me on Patreon. Actually, I've been trying to be able to do some more accessibility content over there, and so you can be able to find me at patreon.com/Steve Saylor.
Awesome. And Steve, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, talking about video games. I really appreciate it, man.
No, of course. Thank you so much. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you all next week in person.
Next week. Are you ready for it? Are you like ready to go?
I think so. I mean, I'm more interested, of course, like I just love being able to see my friends. That's really the main reason why I go to the Game Awards, is to see friends, and hey, it's cool to be able to see like new stuff that's announced too. But get to hang out with folks, and yeah, I'm excited for it. It's always a good time. It's like also like just before my birthday too, so it's kind of like an early birthday gift to myself. So that's kind of like, yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, well now that we know that, maybe we'll make something of it. I'll say, well, you come hang out GB at night. I'm glad you're coming.
Yes.
We will have a lot of friends there, so it'll be a good time. All right, the new poll question before we get out of here. Have you played Dragon's Dogma before? Yes or no? I have played it a little bit, but I want to play it more. I want to like put in some real time into that game so I can actually figure out why people like it so much. But I'm looking forward to Dragon's Dogma 2 regardless. I don't remember if I asked. Have you played Dragon's Dogma 1 before?
No, I haven't. So this will probably be my first time giving it a try. So hey, we'll see what Dragon's Dogma 2 comes out like. So
really looking forward to it. All right, we'll talk about that on Game Mess Mornings tomorrow on Giant Bomb. Speaking of Giant Bomb, we will have Blight Club later today. I'm going back to Ride to Hell Retribution. Unfortunately, going to continue that. Doesn't seem like I'm anywhere near the end of that game. So that'll be a rough one, but tune into that at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time is when we'll start that. Also, I don't know if tickets are still on sale for the live event. The Game of the Year finale, the real Game of the Year getting announced on Saturday, December 9th in LA at the Terragram. Tickets were selling out yesterday, so if you want to get them, go check now. And then one final mention: store.giantbomb.com. A bunch of new merch. If you're looking to get gifts for the Giant Bomb fan in your life, it'd probably be good to check that out. I am very excited to hop in there and get the fanny pack myself. It looks really cool. All right, what's good, Steve? Thank you everybody for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. All right.